NASA may have uncovered the exact day Jesus died, not through faith, not through guesswork, but by mapping the sky with modern technology and uncovering a cosmic alignment buried in ancient texts. On April 3rd, 33 AD, just as the sun was setting over Jerusalem, the moon rose, deep red, bleeding through the dusk. A total lunar eclipse, visible from the very place where Jesus was crucified. For centuries, this moment was hidden in plain sight. Described in the Gospel of Matthew, from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. Echoed again in ancient prophecies, like Joel's chilling words, the sun will turn to darkness and the moon to blood. To most, these were just metaphors, but now, NASA's astronomical models confirm an actual eclipse took place on that exact evening. Historians, astrophysicists, and biblical scholars are starting to agree this wasn't symbolic language. It was a literal event, and it gets stranger. A forgotten apocryphal text known as the Report of Pilate speaks of a sky gone black, stars appearing in the middle of the day, and a blood-colored moon rising as lamps were lit across the earth. It sounds like something out of a prophecy, but it's not prophecy anymore. It's evidence. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what we're about to uncover next might completely shift the way you understand time, faith, and reality itself. This story isn't just about religion. It's about astronomy, historical convergence, and how the past might be far more calculable than we ever imagined. For generations, theologians, skeptics, and scientists have debated the events surrounding the crucifixion. Was there really darkness in the sky for 3 hours? Could the moon have turned red, like blood? Was that just poetic language or an actual celestial phenomenon? In the 1980s, two researchers from Oxford, Colin Humphreys and W.I. Graham Waddington, started digging. But they weren't looking for miracles. They were looking for data. They used historical documents, astronomical models, and biblical chronology to cross-reference the timeline of the crucifixion with known astronomical events, and what they found was astonishing. A lunar eclipse visible from Jerusalem shortly after sunset on April 3rd of the year 33, exactly when many scholars believe the crucifixion took place. This eclipse wasn't just rare, it was symbolically perfect. A blood-red moon, a moment of darkness during the day, a sky that echoed words written centuries before in sacred texts. But what does it mean? It means we might be witnessing one of the most extraordinary alignments between scripture and science ever recorded. NASA's tracking systems, using advanced orbital mechanics, confirmed the trajectory of the moon on that date. Not only was the eclipse real, it was visible to the naked eye over Jerusalem, right as Jesus would have been dying on the cross. Now pause for a second. This isn't about proving divinity. It's not about belief versus disbelief. It's about what happens when ancient observation and modern technology speak the same language across 2,000 years. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. In the book of Acts, the Apostle Peter, speaking 50 days after the crucifixion, quoted the prophet Joel, "The sun will be darkened, and the moon will turn to blood." He wasn't guessing. He was referring to something he believed had just happened. A prophecy fulfilled not in spirit, but in the sky. It's no wonder this theory has gone viral on social media. People aren't just debating theology anymore. They're rethinking history, because maybe the Bible wasn't trying to be mystical. Maybe it was documenting something real, something measurable, trackable, and now verifiable. And that changes everything. What's your take? Is this just coincidence, or have we underestimated the precision of ancient memory? Let us know in the comments, because in the next chapters, things get even more intense. Let's go back to Jerusalem. April 3rd, 33 AD. The streets are filled with whispers. Tension hangs in the air like dust before a storm. Rome's presence is strong. Crucifixions are not rare, but this one feels different. 3 men are hanging on crosses, but one has drawn a larger crowd. Jesus of Nazareth, the man many called Rabbi, others rebel, some Messiah. And as the crowd watches, something terrifying happens. The sky begins to change. According to the Gospel of Matthew, from noon until 3 p.m., darkness came over all the land, not just a shadow, darkness. Now let's stop here. Modern science tells us a solar eclipse cannot happen during a full moon. The crucifixion happened during Passover, a period always marked by a full moon. So how could there have been darkness at noon? This was the exact question that puzzled scientists and historians for centuries. And here's the twist. Colin Humphreys and Graham Waddington realized they were asking the wrong question. The darkness wasn't from a solar eclipse. It might have been a khamsin, a brutal sandstorm that rolls in from the Egyptian desert, turning day into night. These storms are known to blacken the sky and chill the air even at midday. Historical records place them right around April in the region. Combine that with the emotional weight of the crucifixion, and it begins to feel apocalyptic. But the lunar eclipse? That's where things get eerily precise. As the sun set that evening, the moon began to rise over the Mount of Olives, low, dim, and blood red. This isn't dramatic flair, it's physics. When a full moon rises during an eclipse, it passes through Earth's shadow, but it doesn't disappear. It glows in deep crimson, filtered by the atmosphere. Witnesses that night wouldn't have needed imagination. They would have seen a literal moon of blood rising over the city. Now, imagine this through the eyes of the people. A prophet executed. Darkness in the sky. Earth trembling. A red moon climbing the horizon. These are not vague spiritual metaphors. These are physical events, anchored in time and recorded by people who saw them. And centuries before, in the book of Joel, the warning had already been given. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord. It's one thing for prophecy to be poetic. It's another for it to be astronomically timed. Let's take it further. In 1990, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory developed a system capable of projecting the positions of celestial bodies thousands of years into the past. When they ran the models, they found that, indeed, on April 3rd, 33 AD, a partial lunar eclipse occurred exactly when and where the Gospel accounts suggest. And yes, it would have looked like blood, but here's what makes this even more chilling. In the report of Pilate, an apocryphal text not included in the Standard Bible, we find a passage describing that exact evening. It states, "At the moment of the crucifixion, the sun was darkened, the stars appeared, and across the world, people lit their lamps. The moon looked like blood." This text wasn't written by a prophet. It was written like a Roman memo, and it matches the astronomical data. Coincidence? Or convergence? Let's pause again. We're not just talking about one verse from one book. We're talking about multiple sources written decades apart in different cultural and religious contexts, all describing the same sequence of cosmic events. Why would they fabricate the same thing? Here's one possibility. They didn't. They were writing down what they saw. And for the first time in history, science is catching up to those ancient witnesses. But here's where it gets deeply personal. If the moon really did turn to blood that night, if darkness really covered the land for hours, what else in those texts might have been based on real events? When we think of history, we often imagine dusty scrolls, broken pottery, crumbling ruins. But what if history is also written in the sky? The stars don't forget. They move with mathematical precision. They don't exaggerate or lie or dramatize. So when the sky aligns with prophecy, we have to ask, are we witnessing coincidence? or cosmic memory. And what does that mean for our understanding of time? Because if the heavens confirmed one of the most sacred events in human history, maybe they've recorded others too. Maybe the past isn't lost. Maybe it's just waiting, written in light. To understand the full impact of this moment, we have to go beyond the skies, because something else was happening on the ground. Historical accounts describe an earthquake around the time of Jesus' death. The Gospel of Matthew says, "The earth shook, rocks split, and tombs broke open." Again, poetic exaggeration? Actually, maybe not. Seismic data from the Dead Sea region reveals evidence of a significant earthquake that occurred between 26 and 36 AD, right within the time frame of the Crucifixion. In 2012, geologists studying sediment cores found that a disturbed layer matched the kind of shaking that would have occurred during a regional quake. The estimated date? Somewhere between 31 and 33 AD. That's not a myth, that's a geological fingerprint. So now we have a triple alignment, an eclipse, a documented period of darkness, an earthquake, all clustered around a single date. But the implications go further. If April 3rd, 33 AD truly marks the day of Jesus' crucifixion, then every event connected to it, religious, political, and historical, locks into place. The timeline of the early Christian church, the death of Stephen, the conversion of Paul, Pentecost, the rise of a movement that would reshape civilization. Everything, and maybe the most unsettling part, is this: none of it was random. The prophecy in Joel was written 800 years before the crucifixion. And yet, the imagery, darkness, blood moon, trembling earth, lines up with astronomical and geological events on a specific evening in a specific city. It's as if time itself bent to that moment. Now, let's reset for a second. Maybe you're skeptical. Maybe you think, well, eclipses happen all the time. This could still be a coincidence. Fair, but let's run the numbers. NASA's eclipse database shows that a lunar eclipse visible in Jerusalem, precisely timed with Passover, hasn't happened very often. In fact, in the 50-year window around Jesus' life, the eclipse of April 3rd, 33 AD, stands alone in how closely it matches every element described. And remember, the people at that time had no software, no observatories. They weren't predicting cosmic events. They were just describing what they saw. Which raises the question, why would ancient writers across multiple texts invent the exact same symbolic language that just happens to match our astronomical data today? They wouldn't, unless what they saw left a mark so deep, it echoed in every story that followed. And maybe that's the key. Maybe this wasn't just an execution. Maybe it wasn't just the end of a life. Maybe it was a convergence point where time, prophecy, nature, and fate collided. Let's zoom out for a second. In ancient cultures, the sky was sacred. Celestial events weren't just random patterns. They were messages, warnings, signs from the divine. A blood moon wasn't just beautiful. It was terrifying. So imagine you're standing on a hill, watching a man die who claimed to be the Son of God. You see the sun vanish, the sky tremble, the earth rumble beneath your feet. And then a red moon rises silent and slow above the horizon. It doesn't matter what you believed before. Something inside you shifts. That's the moment the world changed. Not because of religion, but because the universe itself seemed to respond. And now, with all our satellites and simulations and space telescopes, we've come full circle. We've looked back 2,000 years, not through legend or dogma, but through math, light, and orbit. And what we found is everything the witnesses said. So maybe we've misunderstood ancient texts all along. Maybe they weren't trying to be sacred. Maybe they were trying to be accurate. And maybe the Bible isn't a book of metaphors, but a book of memories. Memories written in the only language that can survive empires, wars, and time itself, the stars. Let's move forward from April 3rd, 33 AD. The crucifixion has ended. The body has been buried. The eclipse has faded. But the echo of that moment doesn't die. It spreads like a shockwave through time. In the following weeks, something begins to happen. Whispers turn to stories. Stories turn to conviction. And conviction becomes a movement. But this isn't just about belief. It's about what people saw. Peter, standing before the crowd at Pentecost, doesn't just preach faith. He points to the sky. He quotes Joel again. The sun turned to darkness, the moon to blood. He's not offering poetry. He's giving evidence. Because the people he's speaking to were there. They saw the sky turn black. They lit their lamps at midday. They watched the blood-red moon rise over the city. And this changes everything. Because Peter's words are not trying to convert people with emotion. He's reminding them of what they all just witnessed. He's anchoring theology in a shared physical experience. Now, fast forward nearly 2,000 years. In a lab in California, astrophysicists input the coordinates of Jerusalem into NASA's orbital simulation software. They scroll through time, not just years, but centuries. All the way back to 33 AD, the data confirms, on that day, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun aligned. The eclipse happened. The sky changed. Peter was right. But the implications don't end there. Because if we can use celestial data to confirm the timeline of the crucifixion, then the ripple effects reach far beyond theology. We begin to see the Bible as a historical document, not just a spiritual one. And we start to ask, what other moments, buried in Scripture, dismissed as myth, might actually be real? Take the Star of Bethlehem, for example. Some scholars suggest it may have been a rare planetary alignment, Jupiter and Venus appearing as a single bright object. Others propose a comet or a supernova, and today, with astronomical tools, we can actually check these possibilities. It turns out, in 7 BC, there was a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. In 32 BC, Jupiter passed Regulus and then aligned with Venus, an event so bright it could easily have been described as a new star rising in the east. Once again, scripture and science start to rhyme. But there's more. Let's come back to the moon. The idea of a blood moon has fascinated cultures for millennia. It's been seen as a sign of war, of judgment, of cosmic upheaval. And today, we know exactly how and why it happens. It's not divine punishment. It's Rayleigh scattering and atmospheric density. It's physics. But does that take away the mystery? Or does it reveal something even deeper? Because maybe the real miracle isn't that the moon turned red. Maybe the miracle is that people noticed, that they recorded it, they gave it meaning, and passed that meaning down across generations. Maybe miracles are real, not because they break the laws of nature, but because they align with them in ways we couldn't have imagined. And this brings us to a bigger question. If the heavens can preserve the memory of one night, how much of our own history is written above us, waiting to be decoded? Let's step out of theology for a moment. This kind of cosmic timestamping isn't exclusive to Christianity. Ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, Mayans, they all tracked eclipses, solstices, comets. They built entire calendars around the stars. They believed that moments of divine significance were always reflected in the sky. And now, we have the tools to see what they saw, to test what they recorded. It's no longer about blind faith. It's about pattern recognition across millennia. And here's something else worth noting. When we look back through history, major social and political shifts often coincide with unusual celestial events. It's as if humanity has always felt some invisible thread linking the heavens to our hearts. Not because the stars cause these events, but because they give us perspective. Imagine standing under a red moon, knowing it won't happen again for decades or centuries. You'd remember that night forever. So maybe the ancient writers weren't mystics trying to impress. Maybe they were witnesses trying to preserve. And maybe the Bible isn't full of metaphors. Maybe it's a celestial journal, a record not just of faith, but of light and shadow and time. So what does that mean for us today? It means history is not just something we read, it's something we observe. The sky isn't static, it's a library, and the stories written there are still unfolding. And if one of those stories begins with a blood moon over Jerusalem, where does the next one begin? Because if the stars recorded the crucifixion, what are they recording right now? But this isn't the end, because if the sky can confirm one sacred moment, what else has it recorded that we've ignored? What if there are other dates, other alignments, quietly syncing with events we've never questioned? Maybe the past isn't silent. Maybe it's speaking, for gravity, through light, through patterns only now becoming visible. And we're just beginning to listen. There are ancient texts still waiting to be compared, orbits still waiting to be plotted, secrets still waiting to be read, not on paper, but in the sky itself. So whatever you do, don't stop here. There's another video coming up right on your screen, and it might just show you how deep this story goes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.